Hey guys, if you're like, oh gosh, that's not Gretchen, that's Michaela. Yes it is. Hi, I'm Michaela. If you haven't seen me around, because I have only ever, in the last year I think, been on the channel with Gretchen along with me. I'm also here. I've just been really bad at making videos. And there's been a couple reasons for that, part of which we'll talk about in this video, but I wanted to do sort of a wrap up of last year. Just in general, which is allowing me to talk about kind of why I haven't been making videos, which you would have heard if you've seen the videos with me and Gretchen a little bit, and also just talk about some of the stuff I've read because I haven't been making videos for the most part, so I could give you a little bit of a touch of that sort of stuff. And then next week I will talk about what I want to do going forward in 2024, because I miss making videos and I miss doing this. I just need to make myself do it. And right now, if you're like, gosh, if you're doing a video by yourself, why do you have headphones on? It's because I have an emotional support Gretchen on the computer to make me feel better so that I can maybe do this, because part of what has been a huge part of stopping me, I've tried to make a couple videos on my own, is that I've had really bad anxiety for some reason. Like it stresses me out to make a video. So she's helping me to not be stressed out and to just do it. And she's just dancing on my screen right now to make me feel better. So hopefully I won't need this every time I film. But for right now, this is what's happening to get me to do the thing. If you see the next video and you're like, oh, Michaela has the exact same makeup and is wearing the same sweater, mind your business. Don't worry about it. We're doing what we need to do to get the content made. That's the name of the game right now. Just do the thing. So, yes. Hi, I'm Michaela. You've seen me around in our joint channel videos. I'm going to try to be making my own videos once a week, the same as Gretchen does. And then, like we've been doing every other week, you'll get a joint content video of some kind. Whether it's a joint review or a discussion or a round table or whatever it is we do, that's still happening. And then you'll just get us going back and forth every week with something different from our own personal reading. So big thing why I didn't do videos last year was that according to Storygraph, every single book I read was for a joint video with Gretchen. So you would have already seen me talk about literally every single one of these in one of those videos. I could see you thinking, okay, does that mean that Michaela hasn't been reading? No. I have been reading a fair amount, if math is to be expected, or to be believed. I've read the equivalent of almost 325 books. Just all of it was in fan fiction form. Every single one of those would have been fan fiction. And not all of that is like a long form fan fiction. I read, according to AO3, 933 fics last year. And the equivalent of 22,798,130 words. And that's just on AO3. That doesn't include me reading anything on Twitter or anything on Tumblr, which I do read quite a lot of as well, but those are very small form contents. But if you think about that in like a 70,000 word novel format, it's about 325 books worth of fan fiction. And if you've seen some of our reading roundtables, you know that I've talked about I don't know how to do a video about fan fiction because it doesn't feel right to review it in the same way that I would with a book, because it is content that is made for free by a fan for other fans. So like part of me is like, nobody's going to care about me talking about this because they're not in the fandom. Part of me is like, I can't review it the way that I want to review it because like this wasn't edited by a professional team. It's not put up for money. It's not fair to review that. And I could do what I'm going to do in this video where I talk about some of my favorites, and that's what I was doing in the reading roundtables as well, was talking about one of my favorite fics that I read recently. And I could definitely do that or do like a wrap-up style thing. So I'm going to try and think of a way to do some of this fan fiction stuff going forward in the new year. You might see some content from me, but that's the major reason why you weren't seeing videos from me in 2023. I will still talk about my favorite book of the year and my least favorite book of the year. You're probably not going to be surprised by the least favorite one, because I think Gretchen also mentioned it in her video where she talked about her favorites and least favorites. But my least favorite of last year was I Want to Die But I Want to Eat Dokboki by Beck Sehi. If you want to go and watch our video, we literally titled it, like, this is a discussion because we don't know how to review it, because what is this book even? But I gave this 1 star. I don't even know if it deserves the 1 star, because, it's not bad. It's just, what is this? It's something that I paid money for because I have it in my hands, and I read, and some transcripts of somebody's therapy sessions that I don't even feel like helped me in any capacity. I don't think I, learned anything. I don't think it was structured in any way to feel like she learned anything, even. I don't know what this was. And there's a second one coming out. I don't know, man. But I read that, and it was 1 star. I would not recommend it. Don't don't read that one. If you want a full discussion of more detail of what we didn't like about this one, because Gretchen also didn't like it, I'll link the video up in the cards. If you want to know what my favorite book of the year was, it was actually one of the not the last, but one of the last books that I read this year for our joint YA authors writing adult books, not YA authors reading adult books, writing adult books now, and that was Yerba Buena by Nina LaCour. I gave this one 4.5 stars. This is literary fiction. This is a book about 2 women who will eventually fall in love, but it is very much a coming-of-age story. You get to see them from teenage-ish up through about 30-ish. And them coming over their own sort of problems. The way that I pitch this book to people in the store, if I were to give it to them, is this feels like one of those books where you're watching people tied to a rock about to fall over a waterfall into a bunch of sharp rocks at the bottom. You can see them being carried along by life and the circumstances that they're in towards what has to be disaster. But they can't steer themselves away from it, and eventually they come out the other side. It's definitely one of those ones where it feels comforting if you, especially in your early 20s or mid 20s, felt kind of like you were just going with whatever happened to you and whatever was going on. It's one of those books where it feels kind of like, hey, we all have those things where this big major problem shows up and you just have to deal with it. I loved it. It was very poignant. It's queer. Love that. So yeah, that one was my favorite read of the year as far as books go. And again, if you want to hear me talk a little bit about that, but it's also in this wider discussion where we all read books that were written by traditionally YA authors who are now writing some adult stuff, please go watch that reading roundtable. It was super fun and interesting. I think it was a good discussion in general. It was one of the easiest ones we've had because we just kept talking. You know how we are. We just keep talking. Okay. I wanted to mention some of the fics that I read that I really loved. So I went through and I've read a lot of fics that I really loved. Most of the ones that were my favorites of the year were mentioned in previous roundtables, so I might link the playlist of our roundtables up above. The ones where we just brought whatever we were reading, I usually talked about a fan fiction that I really enjoyed. So you can definitely take any of those recommendations as some of my favorites from the year. I wanted to talk about one that I read. I think it was the beginning of December that I read it, called As the Poets Say by Christian M.K. That was written for the Steady Big Bang, which, if you didn't know, a Big Bang is a event that happens in fandom communities where a bunch of fan artists and fan writers get matched up together to work on a project. Christian M.K. wrote a soulmate fic, which is one of my favorite type of fics. In this one, they have the words tattooed on their wrist that are said after their soulmate realizes that they love them. And in this case, Eddie has Dustin died tattooed on his wrist. And if you know Stranger Things, then Dustin's a major character, and obviously we don't want Dustin to die, and Eddie doesn't want Dustin to die, because Eddie likes Dustin, but that's what's tattooed on his wrist, and it's a 4-chapter fic following Steve and Eddie as they go through the events of season 4, up until the point where they get together at the very end. It was an interesting take on this, because obviously some of those events were changed slightly when you put it in a world where Eddie is sort of paranoid about Dustin dying. Because, there's monsters in Stranger Thing, and it's totally possible that Dustin could die. And now Eddie feels responsible because this person that is supposed to be his soulmate who's going to love him forever, the first thing they're going to say to him when they realize that they love him is that Dustin died. It's a bit weird. It's it's an interesting one. Steve's words on his wrist are, "Hey, Steve." Very, very specific reference. But also Steve's like, now anytime anybody says hi to me, I'm just going to panic and think they're my soulmate. Because it's literally just, "Hey, Steve." It was great. I loved it. If you like soulmate fics, if you like some internal angst of like, my love is tied to the harm of one of my favorite people and all of the people that I know, that's also really good. And the twist on why that was said was great. I loved it. It was a really good moment in the fic itself. I would also like to say that this year in fanfiction, I found a couple authors who I have read and loved every single fic that they have put out. That includes Fast Card at MT3, Ghost to the Party, and A's. And I will link all of these things down below if you want to go read them. But any fics by any of those authors, I have loved every single one of them and read all of them. The 933 fic number has got like a good number of fics from all of those authors. And there's other authors, obviously, that I read and enjoy or have read and enjoyed. But those are the ones that, like, really stick out to me when I'm, like, looking back at the last year of, like, I found them this year and, like, needed to read everything that they wrote. The other thing that I wanted to briefly mention was that I did read from one fandom that was not Stranger Things. Which, if you're like, no, Michaela just reads Steve and Eddie falling in love over and over and over again. Yes, accurate, 100% accurate. But I did read a couple of fics outside of those. One of the things that I got really into in August was the band Ghost, which if you don't know them, go ahead and go listen to them. They're metal music, but I think that they're closer to the hard rock end of metal. If you aren't, like, if you immediately go, ew, metal, like, maybe give them a shot. I think you'll like them. They got really popular on TikTok with Mariana Cross, but I would recommend, like, Square Hammer and Kaiserion. Those are two of my favorite songs. Maybe Kiss the Go-Goat, super great song. But that band has a lot of lore, and the performance is played by musicians who are playing characters in the moment. So the singer is played by is Papa, played by Tobias Forge, but there's been different Papas depending on each album. He gets a different, like, character that he plays. And then all of the musicians that play with him are nameless ghouls, which the fandom gives nicknames. And there's sort of lore around that. And one of my favorite fics has to do with the current lead guitarist when they tour Soto, who used to be the bassist for the band. And in the band's lore, the ghouls, depending on the instrument, have, like, an element that they represent and control. So the bassists are water ghouls, and the lead guitar is a fire ghoul. So I read a fic that talks about, like, the in-lore magic of him going from being a water ghoul to a fire ghoul. I have discomfort when it comes to real people fics. Like, I don't think I could ever read a fic that was about, like, the actual human being that is playing these characters, but I'm reading a fic about fake demons. Does this make sense? Reading a fic about fake demons in the lore of a band. Anyway, it was called Make Peace with Your Evil by Squee Needs to Sleep. I loved it. It was very, like, emotional. This, like, kind of almost having to do with, like, being a little bit trans, because he's going from being a water element to a fire element. There is some triggers with self-harm, so if you don't like that, like, that is a part of it. But there was a lot of interesting interactions between the different members of the band, or the characters that they are. And it has polyamorous rep, because for whatever reason, every single fic that involves the ghouls, every ghoul is with every other ghoul. They're just poly ghouls. All of them are into each other, and I enjoyed that concept. You get two types of fics in the Ghost fandom. The I would like to have sex with Papa, or all the ghouls are having sex with each other, and those are all of the fics. It's great. I loved it. So I wanted to recommend that one as well for a different fandom and something interesting. If you like, I don't know, fantasy stuff, you might be interested in that even if you aren't interested in the band. But yeah, I read a lot of fan fiction, probably too much fan fiction this year, and I didn't make a lot of content for you guys. But in the next video, I will talk about what I would like to do next year that will hopefully help me make more content for you guys. So I will see you then. Bye.